Hello, my name is Beck and today I'm going to be doing a bookish unhaul because I've been seeing a few of them going around on BookTube and I thought I'd join in with my own. I don't usually film unhauls. By the time you see this, I've probably gotten rid of these books, but I just wanted to throw my hat in the ring, I guess, and show you the books I'm getting rid of. The first book I'm getting rid of is actually a book that I don't have on me right now, but it's quite a popular series, so you'll definitely know it when I say it. It is Laini Taylor's Daughter of Smoke and Bone series. Now, I loved book one and it's a trilogy, but I didn't really connect with book two as much as I wanted to. I don't really like the forbidden lovers trope, and that was very, very heavy in this series, so I don't really want to read the third book, which I think is called Dreams of Gods and Monsters. So I'm just going to get rid of the series. I don't hate it by any means, and I just figured someone else could enjoy it somewhere else, so it's not really doing much collecting dust on my shelves. That said, even though I am getting rid of Daughter and Smoke and Bone, I have like 4 copies of Strange the Dreamer, so all hope is not lost, and I do love Laini Taylor's writing. It's very atmospheric and beautiful, and I can't wait for Muse of Nightmares to come out in October. It's one of my most anticipated books of this year. The next book that I'm going to be getting rid of is The Painted Man by Peter V. Brett. It's the first in the Demon Cycle series, and this is probably going to be familiar to you because I've been talking about it a lot on this channel recently. I think I've vented quite enough about this book. The only thing I have left to say is that I felt it was just very heavy-handed and it's just not for me. So I'm getting rid of this and the rest of the series, which I mysteriously own. I'm also getting rid of The Lies of Locke Lamora, which is another fantasy book. I have an actual spoiler-free review for this book on my channel, and also I didn't dislike this book. I gave it 3 stars, 3.5 stars. It was just not the book that I thought it was going to be. I think my expectations tripped me over a little bit. I did love the underbelly thievery aspect to this book, so definitely pick it up if you want something a bit dark and gritty, but just overall it wasn't a book that I thought that I would love, so bye. So the next couple of books are actually manga volumes, and I'm getting rid of them because I'm not obsessed with the series, and each volume actually costs like $10 to $15 Australian, and it's very expensive to keep up the habit if I'm not obsessed with it, so I'm just going to get rid of them and clear my shelves, so I'll show you what they are. The first one is fairly popular, and I think it's been talked about on BookTube a fair bit, but it's called Tokyo Ghoul, and it's about a kid who gets attacked when he's on a date, and this ghoul tries to eat him, but then gets crushed by some falling debris, and both of them go into the ER to get saved, but she ends up dying and some of her organs go into his body, so he becomes half human, half ghoul. And this premise was amazing, but the story got a little bit convoluted for me with a lot of unnecessary seeming characters when all I wanted to hear about was the main character becoming a ghoul. I think I ended up giving this around 4 stars, but then it kind of dipped into the 3 stars, 3.5 stars for the next 5 or 6 volumes, so I'm not really invested in this series anymore, unfortunately. Dead Man Wonderland is a book that I talked about in my BookTubeathon TBR, and I read the rest of the volumes that I own this year, and unfortunately, kind of like Tokyo Ghoul, the story got a little bit too convoluted for me. I wish it was a little bit grittier and a little bit more, I want to say expositioning, but that's not really a word. I wish it just exposed more of the story as it went along, because it kind of left breadcrumbs for you to follow, but it wasn't quite enough for me. So this one's going to. And then the last 2 aren't really as hyped or popular manga, but they are Zombicide and Platinum End. Now, the Platinum End manga has been written by the same author as Death Note, which is one of my absolute favourite books. Huge trigger warning for suicide and really dark themes in this book. It's involving angels where there are like 20 of them or something, and they are fighting to become like the head angel, and each of them has a human representative. So it has potential Hunger Games vibes in here just with the contest element, but that didn't really come through in the first volume and I hoped it would. So I'm not really as interested in this series as I thought. And Zombicide, I thought it would just be about zombies, and I read it so long ago that I don't really remember. I think I gave it like 3 stars. It's written by the same guys who wrote Bleach, and I absolutely love that manga. It's quite a popular one, but unfortunately this didn't really hit home for me either, so both of them are heading off my shelves. Okay, so for the next 2 I'm kind of ready to be chased off BookTube because they're both quite popular books and I know they've got a huge fan base, but for me the series became something that I didn't really enjoy. I have finally decided to get rid of Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. I read the rest of the series up to Empire of Storms, so that's the book before this one, and I loved the first 2, because I thought it was going to kind of encourage that trio trope, but it became something else entirely. I feel like the first 2 books could be their own kind of series, and then the rest of the books could be this series instead, because everyone kind of pairs up and it's just very romance and sex heavy, and it's not really something that I look for as like a main theme in a fantasy novel. It's fine if it's on the side, but this is a very main focus. And this character that is in this book as a main character, Kale, I loved him in book 1. Book 2 was, and then he just became basically a knob for the rest of the series. So I don't really care anymore, and I'm not looking forward to reading these books. So why bother putting myself through 500 or 600 pages, however long this behemoth is, it's pretty fat, when I can read something else on my shelf and enjoy it a lot more. So this one is going. In the same vein, I'm getting rid of Akawa, and the first book in this series is A Court of Thorns and Roses. I'm just not connecting to this series. I actually hated book 1. I found that the main character, Feyre, didn't have any agency whatsoever, and it only got interesting in the last 50, maybe 30 pages. I haven't read this one. I've read book 2 and I gave it 4 stars. I did like it, but it was just, I don't know, I don't think I really vibe with Sarah J. Maas's writing. It's very kind of, I don't even know how to describe it. I guess it's just not for me. And I've heard that this kind of ends in a similar format to Empire of Storms. And so just looking at the way that series ended in that book, I'm really not interested in the way that this ends, because everyone seems to pair up and I don't really care about pairings, I care about story. I loved this book as a teenager. It has kind of Fifth Wave vibes, and I loved the film as well, and it's I Am Number 4 by Pittacus Law. Like I said, I love the film. I loved this book as a teen, but I got to, I think, book 3 and then for some reason got distracted and didn't read the series for ages. And then a couple of years ago I picked up book 4 and the font changed whenever a new character perspective was introduced, and the voice just didn't seem to change with the perspective change. Plus I was quite confused because all the characters' names are numbers and I couldn't keep track of who was who. It is really interesting. I love the kind of X-Men power aspect to this series, but I didn't connect with it after coming back to revisit it, and I really don't want to be bothered rereading all of the books again so that I can catch up to where I left off last time. The next books that I'm getting rid of are actually another fantasy trilogy, and they've been sitting on my shelf for a little while, but I'm just not going to read them. I read the first book in January 2016 and it is now August 2018, and I'm not going to get around to it. So they are Captive Prince by C.S. Pacat, and it makes me sad because the first book of this is signed, and Kat is such a lovely Australian author and I feel really bad getting rid of these. And this is just a very dark fantasy with kind of a lot, again, I think the theme for these books is I don't like sex in my fantasy books, because this series focuses on a very kind of domineering sexual aspect, and I feel like that gets subverted and circumvented and explained more as the series progresses, but I gave book 1 3 stars. I don't really think it was my jam, so someone else can fall in love with them. The next books that I'm getting rid of are sci-fi books by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner, so This Shattered World and Their Fractured Light. And I actually read these Broken Stars on audiobook recently and I enjoyed it. It was like a fluffy, romancy sci-fi story, but I just don't really see myself continuing with the series. Book 1 is actually signed, but I didn't get these 2 signed when I went to the signing because, I don't know, I couldn't be bothered carrying them. So I'm going to unhaul both of these, and maybe I'll pick them up in the future as audiobooks. I don't have to own them to do that, so I'm not giving up on the series. I'm just getting rid of the physical copies for now. The next book that I'm unhauling is the second last in my pile, so we're almost at the end, but it is Raw by Cora Carmack, and this is a YA fantasy book that I got in an Owlcrate subscription box months ago, and I just don't think that I will enjoy it. It's seeming to be I don't want to say tropey, but tropey young adult fantasy series. Even though it has elemental magic, which is what interested me in the first place, I feel like this book is going to hinge very largely on the romantic love interest in here, and that's going to either drive or stop certain decisions. And while I'm all for a romantic interest in a book, I don't like it to be the driving force of a story. So I think I can see this being a 2-star read for me, which is why I'm going to be getting rid of it. Okay, so we're on to the last book, and it's actually a graphic novel. So this is Coraline by Neil Gaiman. I have read American Gods. It was the first audiobook I ever listened to, and I didn't vibe with it as much as I thought. I just found it a little bit slow. I haven't tried the TV show, but I might. And so just because I haven't really got into Neil Gaiman's writing yet. I want to say yet because I really want to love Gaiman's writing, but because I haven't got into his writing yet, I think that I'm just going to get rid of this. I got it from a friend, so I didn't buy it, and I don't really enjoy the art style this is in. Not that it's a bad art style, it's just not something that I normally gravitate to, so I'm just going to drop it off at a Salvos again like the rest of these books, and someone else is going to find it and enjoy it. So after getting rid of these books and taking them off my to be read pile, brace yourselves. I now have 168 unread books at home. So my goal is to get that number down to under 100 and then under 50. So hopefully there won't be too many unhauls in the future. Maybe there will, like if I want to cut corners, but 168 books is a lot of books to read, so keep your fingers crossed for me. If you want to track my reading progress, I update Goodreads as often as possible, so that will be linked in my description alongside my social media. So I can't wait to chat with you in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know there were some popular books in this video, but if you've unhauled a popular book yourself, feel free to let me know in the comments. Thank you and goodbye!